Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tiffany Purvis, and I serve as the General Counsel and Senior Philanthropic Advisor here at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're truly happy to have you here. At the Community Foundation, we spend a great deal of time thinking about what it means to invest wisely in our communities, in causes we care about, and in the people around us. But today, we're turning that lens inward because one of the most important investments any of us can make is in our own health and well being. The connection between personal wellness and purposeful philanthropy may not be immediately obvious, but we believe it's profound. When we are well, when we have energy, clarity, resilience, we show up more fully for people and causes that matter the most to us. The work of giving, of community building, of leaving a legacy, all of it is sustained by our capacity to be present and engaged. And that capacity begins with how we take care of ourselves. Sessions like this one reflect our commitment to supporting you, not just as philanthropists and fund holders or staff who are present with us today, but as a whole people. We know that your time is valuable, and we want the programming we offer to meet you where you are, whether that's in your charitable giving, your financial planning, or, as in today's case, your health. And I don't know about you all, but with each passing decade, I'm hearing new sounds in my bones, and I'm like, what is that? So this is a timely presentation. That's why we're so pleased to welcome Jill Sheppard Davenport, Director of Health and Wellness at Pennington Partners Co. Jill is a board certified functional nutritionist who brings both expertise and a deeply practical approach to the complex topic of longevity and health span. She has more than 2 decades of experience helping leaders, entrepreneurs, families, and organizations develop strategies to support long-term health. I have no doubt that what she shares today will be not only informative, but genuinely useful in your everyday life. So thank you again for being here with us this afternoon. Please feel free to engage, ask questions, take notes. I know I will be. This is your time. And with that, I'm delighted to hand things over to Jill. Take it away, Jill.
Thank you, Tiffany. What a great introduction. I loved the way that you connected those concepts together. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you all to talk about building our wellness portfolio and protecting your most valuable asset. So as Tiffany mentioned, I'm a board certified nutrition specialist. I'm also board certified as a health and wellness coach, and my foundation is in functional medicine-based nutrition, which is about prevention and understanding root causes to get ourselves to our best health. I'm with Pennington Partners. We are an RIA and multifamily office. And it's so pleased to be partnered with the Community Foundation to support our families in doing best by the community. And so, in the spirit of that, we'd love to share some information about building your health as your best source of wealth in the spirit of supporting our community. Uh, so, you may be kind of wondering why would a wealth advisory firm or a multifamily office be focused on health and wellness in the first place? And our model is really based on having advisors work with just a few families at a time to wrap their arms around really every single priority and to minimize the complexity. And so we do, of course, work on things like estate planning, tax minimization, real estate, investing. And year after year, the theme that has emerged kind of distinctly is that all those strategies matter, absolutely, and we do fantastic work by our families. We last year received Best Multifamily Office in our size category and Best at Client Services from a major awarder in our industry. But all to say that if we're doing that, our very best, and health goes for families, health rises to the top priority. So our one way that we differentiate in truly supporting our families is to make sure that we do everything that we can to get ahead and we think that that pays huge dividends later. So without further ado, brief disclaimer. So this webinar is for educational information. Any questions, you'll have my contact information at the end, and I'm very glad to address them as well as during the session today. But please know, I hope you're inspired to make some changes that feel doable and sustainable. And if you do, uh, please do take this as education and check in with your doctor, with your nutritionist, and other members of your care team to make sure that what you're interested in is right for you. So, got to say that's really important. The wellness portfolio framework. So positioning today, and you'll hear a lot of this metaphor throughout the talk today, positioning health as our ultimate asset. So just as we diversify a financial portfolio, we're thinking here about diversifying our health investments. So just as you have a financial portfolio that's often a curated collection of, say, four types of assets, that's, let's say, stocks or bonds, real estate, or alternatives, for example, we're going to discuss four aspects of a wellness portfolio and a collection of four wellness assets. So we'll talk about nutrition, movement, stress, and sleep. And just as you measure the rise and fall in the value of your investment, we'll discuss ways to measure the value that you put into each of these investments and how to see if you're going in the right trajectory. One note, the Q&A box, you may be familiar, and the chat box are down at the bottom. Please pop in at any time with any questions, and I'll take comments as I can, and then of course we have time at the end as well. So one thing to just check in the chat box is I'd love to get to know you a bit and hear from you about your favorite snack or treat. So no right, no wrong answer here. Would love to just hear from folks about what's your favorite snack or treat. I'm seeing raspberries, delicious. One of my favorite snacks is strawberries. So when we think about what our favorite snack or treat is, oh, Greek yogurt. Oh, we're going to be talking about Greek yogurt today. Uh, Apples and peanut butter, nice combo. Always a good one. When we think about our favorite snack or treat, ooh, and grapes. Grapes, love it. Uh, I like to set up our mindset for literally like health is in every bite. When we think about our favorite snack or our treat, we can think about every bite as contributing or maybe even taking away from our trajectory with our health. Now, I always say there's no guilt here. Definitely believe in the 80-20 rule. Like if we work on our health 80% of the time, 20% of the time, even though apples and peanut butter, grapes, Greek yogurt, and strawberries are super healthy, 20% of the time, we'll have some more bandwidth to eat that delicious croissant or cake or celebrate birthdays with our families. Tortilla chips, lovely, also great treat. Okay, here's a concept to kind of start us off with. Health span versus lifespan. Sometimes I hear from people, I don't get this longevity business. Like, why would I want to extend my life when I'm older if I'm not doing very well? Um, and so that's when I think about this importance between health span and lifespan. And so what you see here is first looking at the red line. So with the red line, we start with our health span being long. And with the red line, we may see health kind of decline over time as our lifespan goes onward. So basically, the older we get, our health span comes down, and that's what the red line looks like. What we're talking about here are ways to bring the health span in the green line and lifespan together. So the trajectory looks like as we age, staying healthy, 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 and then maybe a moderate decline, but not a huge fall. And then maybe at the very end of our life, we very much shorten that amount of time that we're sick. So that's what we're looking here. We're looking to make our health span trajectory match our lifespan so that we have health for as many years as possible while we're here. Food as medicine is the first important lever that we'll discuss. And we'll take it in three ways. So we'll talk about first a balanced plate. We'll talk next about anti-inflammatory and longevity foods and what longevity really means. And then we'll get into blood sugar balance and why it matters. We'll also get into practical and realistic swaps because I think it's important to say, like, we're truly not going for perfection here. And it's not like I'm giving folks a pass. I truly don't believe that aiming um, for perfection promotes our best health because often we can never start because we feel like we can't live up to how we want to get started. So aiming for, and we'll talk about like 1% increase is the most, in my decades of working in this field, the most successful way that most people can level up to get there to get to where they want to go. So starting here with eating a balanced plate. Now, what this could look like, and fully recognizing that different people have different needs. So it's important to think about this as kind of an example and then get really personalized, whether you're working with a nutritionist or a doctor, for example. So the strategy here is keeping our blood sugar and our cravings for sweet treats, perhaps, in balance by eating a balanced plate. And one simple way to think about that is let's get one healthy fat. So imagine there's olive oil drizzled all over this lovely dish. A protein, here we show a fish. And then one or two complex carbs. And here we see a lot of brightly colored vegetables for that. And one easy way to think about it is cover half your plate in those brightly colored vegetables, or could be grains, promoting a lot of vegetables. And that's a way to make sure that we're getting in enough. So another way to look at this is I like to think of this as our nutrition balance sheet. So you'll see here about half of our plate is covered in these complex carbohydrates. So you'll see kind of our non-starchy carbs there and then some other carbohydrates there. And then that means the other half is roughly divided between fat and protein, a little more protein than fat. And you have some examples there. Um, so these are screenshots from a PDF that I put together where it's color coded. So you can see the colors here, and I've literally color coded a bunch of meals, breakfast, snack ideas that you can see are naturally balanced. And if anyone wants this kind of as a cheat sheet, I'm glad to share. My point here is to say that we can really make this actionable and simplify it. So we can think about if we're making a smoothie, we can add in blueberries and carrot. We can add in some seeds for protein and healthy fats. We can add in some oils, for example, to get even more healthy fats in, and then adding in protein powder. So just one kind of actionable example. And I find that people really like having a cheat sheet. So if you'd like it, happy to send it to you as well. So let's talk about anti-inflammatory and longevity foods. Here's an example. Now, I don't imagine that many of these things will surprise you, right? We know vegetables, fruits, herbs, and spices to make things taste good, perhaps as opposed to a lot of salt. We know nuts and seeds and the other foods listed there are healthy for us. And what I want to talk about today is a little bit more about why. Now, we know that they provide vitamins. We know that they provide fiber, all really important. We know that they provide minerals, but I want to think for a moment beyond the label to really kind of hit home with how food is literally acting as medicine in our body. So the first thing to consider is that there are over 25,000 naturally occurring health supporting chemicals in fruits and vegetables. Imagine fitting that on a label. We'd never get it. We'd never be able to read it all. There's a massive amount of, let's say, hidden benefits in our fruits and vegetables. And the mention of raspberries earlier as a snack. I love strawberries as well. So in strawberries, it contains not just vitamin C, not just a little fiber, but other chemicals called phytochemicals, like flavonols, gallic acid, algaic acid, catechins, anthocyanins. Who cares about those words? What matters most is that these phytochemicals, they interact with our biology in the same pathways that drugs do. Uh, Now, this isn't to say swap this and get off your medications, although perhaps you can work towards that trajectory in some ways. But this is to say that they're really powerful, that they protect against disease by impacting the same functions that pharmaceuticals impact. One great example, think about ginger, for example. Ginger impacts the same pathway called the NF-kappa B pathway that Advil interacts with. And it's a great way to reduce pain in the body. Turmeric works on that pathway too. Uh, so I just want to give a shout out to the tremendous amount of work that eating fruits and vegetables can do. Plants protect themselves and then they protect us. So why are these chemical compounds in plants in the first place? And I like to think of the first one there, the humble blueberry. Really interesting kind of study. So the blue in blueberry comes from a phytochemical, otherwise known as a polyphenol. This phytochemical is anthocyanin. So literally the blue in blueberry is because anthocyanin is blue. And I think about all these colors and eating the rainbow is like nature's highlighter, helping us diversify the different kinds of important plant chemicals that we take in. And there's a really interesting study that blueberries get more anthocyanin when grown in stressful environments, like along the side of the highway. Now, I'm not going to say go pick blueberries along the side of the highway because they probably have exposure to pollution, right? But it's to say plants respond to threats. They respond to pollution. They respond to heavy metals in soil. They respond to threats like bacteria and viruses, and even stress, like being on the side of the highway. They build all these amazing chemicals, which are food as medicine. And then when we eat these foods, those same chemicals protect us. I was so enthralled by this science story that I wrote a whole food as medicine based cookbook called Better Broths and Healing Tonics to tell the story about how each of these different ingredients really impact our health. So we can think of them as anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, anti-cancer, immune modulating, mood supporting. They do a lot of great work. So we can think about, as I kind of referenced before, each meal, it's either an investment in our health or a withdrawal on our health. And this idea that small doses give us these huge returns. And actually, what we found in scientific studies is that it's tiny doses of these plant chemicals, like the blue in blueberry, for example, um, if we consume them regularly and in combination, so like eating the rainbow, that's what science shows us is most neuroproductive, best for our cardiovascular system, and provide all these effects to how our genes work. Here are a couple recipe examples, and that might be a little hard to see, so I'm happy to send some recipes from the book. But basically, this one combines turmeric, which is really good for extending longevity. Turmeric actually protects the brain from oxidative stress, the kind associated with Alzheimer's disease, for example. Uh, Here is another example. Green tea, and I know it might sound strange, but we combine it with bone broth here in this recipe. It does so much to help improve cognitive performance when you combine those kinds of things together. And one great example is that among elderly Japanese adults, one study found that those who drank 4 cups or more of green tea daily, and I know it's a lot, but they halved their depression symptoms compared to those who drank none or less than 1 cup. So thinking about drinking our medicine in the form of things like green tea, it really has tremendous effects. So blood sugar balance is our third lever for food as medicine. And check out this picture. So this is a federal government study, and it's showing that where you see the blue lines are, like this is the target range by age for the amount of green, dark green leafy vegetables that we want to take in. And the thing to take away here is that these are all the way up here, and then the average intake is all the way down here in both males and females. So the average, if you're feeling like how do I do this? You're not alone. The average American is under eating, for example, dark green leafy vegetables. But what we tend to be doing too much of is, again, the blue is the ideal or the recommended, and the orange is what we're actually eating. So on the flip side of the green leafy vegetables, we tend to eat a lot of added sugar, much more than we need. And this has impacts on our community, right? This impacts family health. This impacts people's ability to contribute to the economy, for example, to do their best at work with a strong, healthy, solid mind, because of how this impacts our body. And I'll get into that in just a second. Here's just a little bit more understanding by age breakdown. I think it's really interesting that in the 50 to 70 subset, we're getting this huge portion of our calories as added sugar. Um, and if you think about, 57 pounds of added sugar per person, which is an average in the US, that's a lot. And about half is coming from beverages. So how do we do something about it? And what's wrong with too much sugar? So think a second about what health problems you might associate with taking in extra sugar. And then here's some among many. And the reason I like to say this is, again, not to, if we delighted in some ice cream or delicious pie last night, to have regret, but to think about the amazing value that changing this aspect of our diet by eating delicious things, delicious swaps, uh, the many ways that it can really help us. And I've bolded some here, like cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, depression, diabetes, hypertension. I wonder if any of us together are dealing with some of these. Inflammation, insulin resistance, like occurs in diabetes, pain, arthritis, and being overweight. Excess sugar contributes to all of these. It may not be new to you, of course, but the reason I highlight those is because these are the largest causes of chronic disease and illness in the US and throughout much of the world. And if we think about that health span and lifespan picture again, these are the things that are causing our health span to decline rapidly. And so if we focus on sugar as a lever, we can keep our health span going for much, much longer. Now, what do we do? Questions coming in. If we have a sweet tooth and fruits don't feel as satisfying. So one really important thing is thinking back to that balanced plate. You remember that about half was like healthy carbs and half is protein and fat, a little more protein and fat. Protein is so satiating. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about protein now, and sometimes in some conversations it's a bit overdone. Protein, especially if we start with protein first thing in the morning around 30 grams at breakfast, it really impacts the rest of our day. And I've seen it makes such a big difference for so many people that I work with that they were surprised. I can't believe if I just changed breakfast that by 3 o'clock, I don't need as much sweet. Uh, the other thing is making sure that we enjoy the food that we have. And I'm going to share some recipes in just a few that are great for us, but really hit that spot to send the message to our brain, hey, I'm satiated. This was a really delicious experience. Um, and I think the last two levers I'll mention now, like fiber is really good at making things feel satisfying. So I know we say apple a day keeps the doctor away. I like to think an avocado a day can keep the sweet tooth away because it's such a great source of healthy fat and fiber. And those two things can also really fill us up. There's one last piece, which are I work in my practice by utilizing amino acids with people. So these are components of protein. It's a supplement that you take, very specific supplement per person, depending upon what their needs are. And not exaggerating, I see food cravings, especially for sweets, can go away within a number of days and be sustained, which is why I dedicated myself to really learning the science of that. Because so often we are craving things because we have a biological need that isn't being met. And that's a really targeted way of meeting it. How much added sugar is okay? So let's look at the one in the middle. The American Heart Association is the most conservative and the one that I tend to prefer. So the maximum is under 6 teaspoons of added sugar a day for women and under 9 for men because they tend to be taller and use more energy. Now, how do we make this real? Well, one way is to visualize sugar content. So if you have a package, for instance, turn it around, look at the grams on the back, divide the grams by 4. So say you have a snack bar and it contains 16 grams of sugar. Divide it by 4, and that lets you visualize the number of teaspoons of sugar. So in a 16 gram of sugar snack bar, divide it by 4, and you know it contains around 4 teaspoons of sugar. So going back here, if we're aiming, for instance, as women, for getting less than 6 teaspoons and men getting less than 9, we can kind of put that in context and think like maybe I'll get a snack bar that's got a little less sugar because I want to spend my sugar teaspoons elsewhere on things that I love a lot. So when I mentioned the idea of making sure that we really feel satisfied, that we're loving and enjoying what we're eating, then you may remember that like for a lot of people, half of our calories from sugar tend to come from beverages. So here's a citrus fizz mocktail, nothing bad in it. Um, and it can really hit the spot and kind of give us what we need. I also love adding things like taking a seltzer and adding strawberries and letting it sit for a while. And the strawberry flavor really imparts to the seltzer and it creates a really delicious flavor that can be really satisfying. Another sweet alternative, this is a strawberries and cream ice pop. And I played around a lot to create this recipe so that we could have something good for kiddos. And again, as I said, if anyone wants some recipes or a booklet of recipes, savory and sweet, I'm glad to share that with you. And then here's another sweet alternative. And it's funny, I have a lot of clients that I work with kind of whipping this up in a blender like a Vitamix. And their grandkiddos or others in their family are referring to this as their ice cream. So this has got the blue and blueberries in it, some bananas for this additional sweetness and to fill us up, and some other delicious things. By the way, cocoa powder is a really great antioxidant. So literally everything in here is excellent for us. And then just to make it real as well, here's what I call the sweet life prepared snack list. Things that add the fiber, add the protein, kind of are that balanced plate almost all in one, because they contain many of those nutrients that we want to focus on. So here's just a cheat sheet again, to maybe make it easy and simplify grabbing some snacks. Now, one thing is I like to say, like, take things personally. So what this means is that what may cause blood sugar elevations in one person may not in another. And it can be surprising. Now, things that have a lot of sugar, of course, are going to affect people across the board. But sometimes a whole grain bread may affect one person a lot more than another. For some people, it may affect them not at all. And so whole grain bread could be a really great swap for them for white bread, for example. Some people eating whole grain bread could make their blood sugar rise a lot. They're doing all the work, right, to make this healthy sandwich, for example. And we can swap in maybe something else, like a wrap, maybe made of coconut, for example, or almond, for example. A great brand for those is Siete in the supermarkets. So just keep in mind to take things personally. And I get asked a lot about continuous glucose monitors. No need if this isn't your thing, but some people really want to know, hey, how is certain foods impacting my health? And this is a great thing you could ask your doctor for, or there's a lot of companies that make these available now. You pop it in, it feels like nothing. The numbers track to an app, and you can really kind of understand and personalize what's impacting your blood sugar. Getting back to cravings, I think it's really important to get support for emotional eating. Um, I experience this a lot in my practice and working with our families, that oftentimes we're craving something because we're experiencing something in our body. We're experiencing something in our mind and in our heart. And so here's an example of a emotional eating assessment. Things like I feel strong emotions such as guilt or failure after eating certain foods. Um, it could be I usually continue eating after I feel full, right? Because it's not the calories I'm craving, it's something else that I might be craving. I eat for reasons other than hunger, like upset, boredom, stress, loneliness. And so if that's you, like I said, I love to use amino acid therapy to turn off cravings and support mood. It works so well. It needs to be done very specifically and evaluated if it's for the right person. Uh, so definitely requires working with a trained clinician. But there are other wonderful strategies for emotional eating, such as mindfulness methods, for example. And I want to kind of dig in here for a second because I think when it comes to making health changes, it can be really easy to be sort of equal parts inspired and then feeling sort of equal parts guilt. And that's not the takeaway. That's going to help us kind of sustain and drive our motivation to feel better. And it's certainly not the takeaway that I want us to have. And so sometimes I like to explain a little bit about, like, what does sugar and emotional eating have to do with each other exactly? And so one example is that sugar activates what's called the dopamine reward circuit. And what I mean by that is sugar activates dopamine, and it's the pathway in our body that controls how we respond to things like stress, for example. Dopamine goes up when we get a reward from something that we crave or that we might even be addicted to, right? So it may go up in video games if that's our thing. It may go up and does go up when we eat sugar. So we experience this pleasure or reward when we eat sugar. And then it can become kind of this kind of repetitive process where we may need sugar again and again. So we can interrupt this process by one, doing some mindfulness, which we'll do briefly, to getting in that protein. It really, I know it sounds like a light thing, but we even have protein as a foundation for overcoming addictions to uh, all sorts of drugs. Opioids, for example. When I worked at the VA hospital for about 5 years, protein was a key foundation in helping folks who were recovering from opioid addiction. due to pain management. So it's a central, really powerful part. Uh, there are amazing ways through food, through these very seemingly simple principles, to interrupt this sugar reward circuit. So any questions on that, of course, please pop it in the chat, um, and we can absolutely get back to it. Kind of along the same lines, and this kind of makes me laugh. It's important to have a balanced diet, and so you can see on the left, some wine and some maybe bonbons, and on the right, dark chocolate and some more cocktails. And so I just want to say, mindset and environment is huge, and surrounding ourselves with food to help promote the most positive environment, but also just having a little humor about it and that 80/20 rule, kind of doing what serves us best, maybe 80% of the time, to allow for kind of some of this joy food and thinking of it as joy food as opposed to maybe everyday food, but not feeling guilty and experiencing all the joy when we have those bites. So next up is movements. And something I'd like to share is that we can really think about exercise as miracle grow for our brain. And what I mean by that is when we exercise, and in particular, when we engage our muscles, we're producing something very special. In addition to muscle tone and feeling like we have a bathing suit body, we're producing something very special for our brain and for dementia prevention. And that special thing is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. We're going to call it BDNF, it's abbreviation. Um, BDNF helps establish growth of new brain cells. BDNF protects our neurons from threat. BDNF helps our brains as we age, and it's associated with improved learning and memory. It helps lower our risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. It is a key provider supporting something called neuroplasticity, where our brain is adapting and responding in different ways to keep brain function high. And then BDNF, neurotrophic, means like growth of our neurons and development of our neurons. And BDNF literally helps the brain grow and protect it from shrinkage. And the reason I mention that now is that we have a form of an MRI called the neuroquant that literally can identify which areas of our brain are shrinking as we age. It's actually not that expensive. You can get it done at GW. I myself have had it done. Uh, and the idea is to understand, is there kind of atrophy or shrinking? And BDNF is our main sort of shrinkage preventer, which really matters because it means if it's shrinking, there's fewer neurons, there's fewer connections, there's fewer memories forming. So really, really, really helpful. And we can increase it with just 6 minutes of vigorous exercise. And so you can think about walking really, really quickly on a treadmill. Or if you have an elliptical, hopping on the elliptical and kind of jogging it out really fast for 6 minutes. But this also can be accomplished in a whole variety of ways. And it doesn't have to be vigorous. It just takes a little longer. So you could do 30 minutes of walking, for example. And then what we found is there's no time like today to start, that being active at any time in adulthood helps promote BDNF and helps prevent cognitive decline later on. So if we would like, we can prioritize uh, protecting memory and learning and skill development through exercise, in addition to all the things that exercise we know provides for our physical fitness and how our body looks. So exercise is a miracle grow for our brain. And I know that we don't all necessarily have access or a desire to hop on a treadmill or an elliptical. And there is a strong, strong case for walking as a key way to prevent dementia. And a 15 to 20-minute walk per day was studied in the study cited there from UC San Diego as comparing that to those who don't walk. And the difference was a 33% reduction in the risk of mild cognitive decline. So this is a rigorous study and kind of an astounding result. So it's really one of the most promising ways to reduce the risk of dementia, as you can see at the bottom there. And thinking about maybe adding a half an hour of movement or a little bit more vigorous activity is associated with these great improvements. One great way to build it into the routine is thinking about taking 1 or 2 times a day after we eat to just walk around. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes to get the impact. Even getting up and walking around for 10 to 15 minutes can lower our blood sugar, can lower our blood pressure, and start really supporting our brain and getting some of those prevention effects. So stress management. Chronic stress is not just a feeling. It makes changes in our body. So chronic stress elevates a stress hormone called cortisol. By the way, when we're eating lots of sugar, we know insulin goes up. We talk about that with diabetes. But when blood sugar goes up really high, cortisol steps in to try to protect us, to bring blood sugar back into kind of a healthy, even range. Why am I saying this? What does it have to do with stress? Well, the reason it matters is if we're using a hormone, our stress managing hormone, cortisol, to just manage the stress of blood sugar fluctuations, like how much cortisol is going to be available to get us through times of stress in our day, dealing with a difficult conversation, focusing on something really important with a family member, um, dealing with those moments where you may be running late for something. So we can think about managing blood sugar as a way to really support our feeling of stress too, and how it impacts our actual body. Also, when we deal with stress, this suppresses our immune function. And so dealing with chronic stress is a really important tool for longevity because it makes us less susceptible to getting sick. One of the key kind of tie-ins with all the food approaches that we've spoken about is that they reduce inflammation. And stress stokes inflammation. So if we're eating in all these ways to bring down our inflammation, let's also kind of get at it at another way by reducing chronic stress as well. Stress also disrupts sleep, and it actually impacts our emotions in such a way that it can impair decision making. And we've seen it. Like when we're really stressed, we might just sort of burst, right? Something comes out of our mouth. Maybe we wish we could claw it back. There's some biological things happening that make us sort of more susceptible to bursting in that moment, going on in our prefrontal cortex in our brain. So there's really stuff happening in our body when we're experiencing stress other than it being a feeling. And so we'll talk about what we can do about that. And I want to just show an example of actually measuring that cortisol that can spike. This is actually mine from years and years ago, showing that my stress was spiking at around noon on the daily. And so there are ways we can measure this, but what brought it way down into healthy range for me was actually eating a lot more protein at breakfast because it helped with those blood sugar fluctuations that led to my body saying by noon we've had enough. And the stress in my body kind of rose. So what can we do about stress kind of in an instant, in addition to bringing our blood sugar down so that it is not sort of competing for our stress hormone for kind of mood and stress management. One method is the stop method. And this was created by a psychologist. And it goes like this: stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. Um, so just taking a moment for yourself and stop whatever you're doing. Take a breath. Observe how you're feeling right now. And then proceed. And in an instance, often we can become aware of how we're doing right now and kind of slow our stress response down. Stress also lives in the body. And I put this picture here because many of us are probably in a chair. And I invite you on the next slide or two, if it's safe and comfortable for you, and I'm doing it too, to kind of take your ankle, put it over your knee, if you can, and then just kind of lean forward a little bit and begin to feel a stress. When we work the stress and tension out of our body, that can sustain really positive effects. So keep in your figure four stretch if you like for a few slides. Um, sleep is really important. I want to emphasize that in addition to all the good things we know about it, um, for energy, for mood, sleep also supports healthy blood sugar, really crucial for that. And sleep, I want to just point out that first bullet there. It really is crucial for flushing out this waste of toxic proteins, things like amyloid beta and tau protein that are at the center of Alzheimer's disease. And it doesn't happen during the day. That process happens at night while we sleep. So it really slows aging and increases longevity in particular for our brain. If we do 1% better, like I'd mentioned before, does this really make a difference? And I like to think about, let's start this concept today instead of one day. So flipping the script from I'll do these things one day to thinking of today as day one. 1% every day actually has enormous rewards. So just if we increased 1 million, 1% every day, and compounded that, we'd have 38 million by the end of the year. The same thing happens when applied to our health. A 1% improvement every day helps us become 37 times better in 1 year if you do the math. And what does this really mean? So we talked about protein and how important it is for muscles, for blood sugar regulation, for avoiding cravings. This could mean just a few bites, for instance, of Greek yogurt or cottage cheese every day, a few bites more at breakfast until we reach our goal of 30 grams. Going down to stress, this could mean 1 minute a day of stillness, like the stop method, building up until maybe we get 10 to 15 minutes a day using a meditation app. And I have some additional examples for you there. But the honing in point is that doing a little tiny better, 1% every day, that's really the way that's sustainable to put your wellness portfolio into action. So thinking about what's 1% better you could do every day for your health. And here's a bunch of ideas. Not to do all of these, but to think about just kind of one thing that you could choose. One question's coming in on thoughts on fasting or time frames. So fasting can be helpful for some people doing intermittent fasting, so maybe 12 hours, stopping eating at 6 p.m., and then not eating again until, later in the morning. That can be helpful for some people. It can help us lose weight. It can help us maintain blood sugar. It can help reduce inflammation. And it could be something to try out. Ask your doctor about it. Some people really need to eat first thing in the morning to maintain their energy. And if that's you, you'll know it by feeling tired or weaker or hangry later in the day. And then we'll finish with biomarkers. And here's just a reminder, if you're doing your stretch still, to go ahead and switch that leg to get the stretch in on the other side. And here's some key biomarkers worth tracking. All of these protect key levers for longevity and well-being and for helping to get ahead of cognitive decline. So among the metabolic and vascular, inflammation and hormonal, and nutritional and others. And I have information there on how they really help. The reason I mentioned these is that these often get missed in doing our standard physical. And all of these are really actionable and changeable through diet and lifestyle or through very selective support with maybe medications, such as with our thyroid. These often get missed. They can be massively supportive in helping our health improve and getting ahead of our health. An invitation if you'd like. We do webinars around 4 times a year where we bring in experts in conversation. So one coming up if you'd like is becoming the CEO of your health. And there's a registration link and a QR code. We're bringing in Dr. Lucy, who's in our area. Her practice is in DC. She's a primary care physician. She's coming out with this great book, Beyond the Prescription, A Doctor's Guide to Taking Charge of Your Health. And we love doing book giveaways. And to incentivize people to interact and show up live, we give copies to those who join us live. So there's the registration information if you'd like, and happy to send after as well. And if you'd like to kind of stay in touch around tips, our favorite wellness books, products, and interviews, here's another way that you can do that if you'd like. So there's a short link to join our newsletter if you like. We don't spam. And there is a QR code if you'd like to sign up that way. So with this thought, your health is the one investment that pays dividends in every area of your life. Here's my information. Should that be helpful for you? And opening up to any additional questions that we may have. And we'll cover any questions that we may have. And I just wanted to turn this back over to Tiffany. Okay, I see a question coming in. What are good snacks that have protein and give that same dopamine boost? Well, one thing is the dopamine reward circuit comes from anything that we really desire and that we crave. So one thing that's really great is combining, say, Greek yogurt and adding something that's really delicious, like strawberries, berries. You could drizzle a little maple syrup. You could drizzle a little honey, for example, and that's going to send a signal to our mind and our brain, hey, this is delicious. This is hitting that spot. But it's also kind of biohacking because it's going to keep our blood sugar nice and stable with that protein of Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, for example. So we'll get the boost and the stability. Yeah, thanks for that question. Other questions that we may have. Okay, so one question is, yeah, and glad to. Thanks for the thanks. So glad to be here. Hypertension and diabetes runs in my family. We're working to combat it. We work out for 3 days per week, or about 1.5 to 2 hours. Is that a good balance? First of all, I mean, kudos to you and your family for working to get ahead of this. Um, and yes, that's a terrific approach to do. Often with hypertension, it's helpful to break it up throughout the week, and it can be really helpful to do it right after eating. So one consideration is to do a 30-minute walk or exercise after you eat a meal. And I've seen blood pressure. It's amazing how quick it keeps in range or goes down right after. So I'll stop with that and turn it over back to the team.
Thank you so much, Jill. This was
Yeah.
truly a gift of a conversation. Just the idea of a wellness portfolio is one I think many of us will carry with us well beyond today. Just as we think carefully about how we steward and grow our financial resources, you've mentioned and reminded us that our health deserves that same level of intention and care. So, for our fund holders, we know that philanthropy is often rooted in a deep sense of purpose, a desire to show up for your communities, your family, and the causes you love for the long haul. What Jill has shared today is a powerful reminder that sustaining that purpose starts with sustaining ourselves. We are so grateful you carved out time this afternoon to be here with us, and equally grateful to Jill for bringing her expertise and warmth to this conversation. I know I will want that recipe book, and I took plenty of notes. So we hope you leave today with just at least one small, meaningful step you're ready to take towards protecting your most valuable asset, your health. And I also want to remind you that our next Foundation Fundamental session is coming up on Tuesday, April 28th at 10 a.m. And we'll review your fund's investment performance, plus an update and market outlook from our outsourced Chief Investment Officer, SCI. So, on behalf of the Greater Washington Community Foundation, thank you so much for being here with us and take good care of yourselves.